Hi, boys and girls. We are on Chapter 11 from The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. Camp Kukuskus. Kukuskus. Camp Kukuskus was on a small lake deep in the woods of Ontario. There were no summer cottages on the lake, no outboard motors, no roads with cars rushing by. It was a wilderness lake, just right for boys. Mr. Beaver left Sam and Lewis at the end of the dirt road, and they finished their journey to camp by canoe. Sam sat in the stern and paddled. Lewis stood in the bow and looked straight ahead. The camp consisted of a big log cabin where everybody ate, seven tents where the boys and the counselors slept, a dock out front, and a privy out back. A privy is a bathroom. The woods closed in all around, but there was a bare spot that had been made into a tennis court, and there were plenty of canoes in which to take trips to other lakes. There were about 40 boys. When Sam's canoe grounded on the sandy beach next to the camp dock, Lewis stepped ashore wearing his slate, his chalk pencil, and his trumpet. About 20 boys rushed down to the landing to see what was going on. They could hardly believe their eyes. "Hey, look what's here!" one of the boys yelled. "A bird!" cried another. "Look at the size of him!" Everybody crowded around Lewis, wanting to get a closer look at the new camper. Sam had to push some of the boys back to keep Lewis from getting crushed. "Take it easy, will you?" Sam implored. That evening after supper, the director of the camp, Mr. Brickle, built a large campfire in front of the main lodge. The boys gathered around, they sang songs and toasted marshmallows and swatted mosquitoes. Sometimes you couldn't understand the words of a song because the boys sang with marshmallows in their mouths. Lewis did not join the group. He stood by himself at a little distance. After a while, Mr. Brickle rose to his feet and addressed the boys and the counselors. "I call your attention," he said, "to a new camper in our midst, Lewis the Swan. He is a trumpeter swan, a rare bird. We are lucky to have him. I have employed him at the same salary I pay my junior counselors, $100 for the season. He is gentle and has a speech defect. He came here from Montana with Sam Beaver. Lewis is a musician. Like most musicians, he is in need of money. He will wake you." One of the new boys, who had never been to camp before, spoke up. "Mr. Brickle, why is this camp called?" "Oh, well, that's funny. This book is missing page 95, and page 96 is printed twice back to back." "Huh. Interesting. Mr. Brickle, why is this camp called Camp Kukuskus? What does Kukuskus mean?" "It's an Indian name for the great horned owl," replied Mr. Brickle. The new boy thought about this for a moment. "Then why didn't you just call it Camp Great Horned Owl instead of Camp Kukuskus?" "Because a boys' camp should have a peculiar name, otherwise it doesn't sound interesting. Kukuskus is a terrific name. It's a long word, but it only has 3 letters in it. It has 2 S's, 3 K's, and 6 O's. You don't find many names as kooky as that. The funnier the name, the better the camp. Anyway, welcome to Camp Kukuskus. It rhymes with moose. That's another good thing about it. And now it's time for everybody to go to bed. You may take a swim before breakfast tomorrow, and you don't need to wear your swim trunks. Just jump out of bed when you hear the trumpet of the swan. Take off your pajamas, race to the dock, and dive in. I will be there ahead of you to do my celebrated backflip from the diving tower. It freshens me up for the hard day ahead. Good night, Lewis. Good night, Sam. Good night, Applegate. Good night, all." The light was fading. The boys straggled off to their tents in the darkness. The senior counselors sat together on the porch and stayed up a little later. Sam crawled in under his blankets in tent 3. Lewis walked to a high, flat rock by the shore and stood there waiting. When the lights were all out, he faced the camp, raised his horn to his mouth, and blew taps. Day is done, gone the sun, from the lake, from the hills, from the sky. All is well, safely rest, God is nigh. The last note seemed to linger on the still waters of the lake. From their beds, the boys heard the beautiful sound. They felt sleepy and serene and happy, all but Applegate Skinner, who didn't care for birds at bedtime. But even Applegate was soon asleep, along with the others in his tent. He was also asleep, and he was snoring. People who dislike birds often snore. A deep peace fell over Camp Kukuskus. And there is Sorry, it's crooked. There's Lewis playing taps before bed for all the campers.